Hello, everyone. Welcome to Random Encounter 312 or 312. My name is Jono Logan, and happy holidays to everyone out there. This episode is going up on the 23rd of December, which is one day before Christmas. And so if you celebrate any holidays in these couple of weeks, I wish you happy ones from everyone here. And we have our own way of celebrating here at RPGFan, and that is with our annual most anticipated games list. So yeah, we are rapidly approaching 2025, and there are going to be a lot of games in 2025 that we are super excited about. And every year, Zach, who is here today, spearheads and puts together, because he's the feature manager, it's his job, he puts together the most anticipated games list. And every year we get together and we talk about it. So today, joining us on the podcast, as I said, is Zach.
Hello.
We have Wes with us today.
Hey, everybody.
Aleks.
Hello.
And Kyle.
Hello.
So 2024 is almost past us. 2025 looms ahead of us. I'm going to resist asking everyone how your 2024 was because it was a very difficult year for a variety of reasons. However, one area that it definitely wasn't bad was in games. If you listened to our previous episode last week on the Game Awards, you know, well, I mean, if you listen to this podcast, you probably very much know because you follow video games. It's been a good year for games. A lot of really, really impressive titles this year. And we're going to be focusing those on I think it's going to be the year-end retro episode, which I think comes out later this week. But for now, we're going to be looking ahead. So we're just going to jump right into it because there's a lot of games here to get through. This is always the biggest episode of the year. So we're just going to dive right in right now. And these are in alphabetical order. You can follow along with the feature. It came out last week. So you can just go to the feature at rpgfan.com, open it up, and if you want to follow along, we're right there. There's little write-ups, and the entire staff contributed. So first up, we have Assassin's Creed Shadows. That's coming out on February 14th. And by the way, I will be including release dates, but we don't have that many of them yet. So this is set in Japan's Sengoku era, and there are two playable protagonists. And it's going to be, it's Assassin's Creed game. You can switch between the characters freely. One is much more combat-oriented. The other is much more stealth-oriented. And this game, unfortunately, was confronted with a fair bit of online controversy this year due to the race of one of the main characters, which, frankly speaking, I don't think anyone in this podcast would have a problem with. So we're not really going to talk about the controversy because, why feed the internet rage bait machine? But we are going to talk about this game and if anyone's really excited for it. So personally, I've never played an Assassin's Creed game. They have been a perpetual standout on my backlog that are always just there. And I'm always worried to play the first one because I'm like, if I play the first one, I know what's going to happen. I'm just going to play all of them. And there's like 6 months of my year. But I suspect there are some people on here who are actually quite excited to play this, or at least take a look at it.
Oh, yes. I'm not the world's biggest Assassin's Creed fan, but I've definitely kept up with quite a few of them, especially as they've inched into RPG territory more and more over the last several years. Probably decade or so at this point. God, we're all old.
Yeah, Odyssey was the first one to really dip its... Was it Odyssey or was it...
Origins?
Origins started to, and then Odyssey really cemented it. But the thing that interests me most about Shadows is Yasuke being a protagonist in there. Because he's had kind of a banner decade as a historical figure, really being represented in pop culture and anime and TV and video games. Most recently in the Neo games and in Samurai Warriors 5 as a brand new playable character to that franchise. And kind of the mystique and legacy behind this character is so fascinating, and you've seen it delved from so many different angles. And Assassin's Creed has always played it pretty fast and loose with history, so it's really fun seeing like what spin they're going to put on a historical character. And Yasuke is just kind of blowing up right now, for lack of a better term. So I'm really interested to see what they do with him and how he feels differently as more of a face-to-face combatant than your usual Assassin's Creed protagonist.
Yeah, I mean, on the I think it was the retro episode, Aleks, that we do the top PS4 games.
Right.
I was somebody who had Assassin's Creed Odyssey ranked super, super high just based on my personal experience with it.
Did you have it ranked number one?
It was my number one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, speaking of controversy, so this is definitely a game that I've kept my eye on. I don't have as much of a personal attachment to the Japanese era here as I do to the ancient Greek one, which was part of the Odyssey connection for me. I am a little bit skeptical that Assassin's Creed can really deliver on some of these RPG promises. But I really do like their attention to detail. Like I was just watching one of the combat or gameplay previews, and the way that the assassin character kind of like tiptoes on the ice as she approaches it was really neat. And I'm all in on this proposed league system, which kind of allows players to forge alliances that are supposed to impact a variety of things. So if it nails those types of things, then I think we're cooking. And if not, then we're probably just killing.
Yeah.
Or cooked.
Speaking of cooked, Ubisoft. One of the things that some of the controversy behind this game that actually could be legitimate is the fact that this was not supposed to be on our 2025 list. It was supposed to have come out in November, and it was delayed a few months into it, hopefully to smooth out some of the bugs and things like that and make it as good an experience as possible. But Ubisoft has had what could charitably be called a difficult year. There are rumors that Tencent is looking at acquiring them. They're talking about maybe going private. There's a lot going on there. As probably the biggest game developer in Toronto, that's a little bit troubling to me, but it's not difficult to see why. I mean, Ubisoft over the last few years has really been hammering the crap out of their franchises to a degree that is kind of sucking a lot of the life out of them. And the concern about Assassin's Creed Shadows is that this might just be a standard, almost cookie cutter Ubisoft game. And there might not really be anything there for it, certainly not to save the studio. I really hope that's not the case. I really hope this is a good game, because I think Ubisoft, I mean, God, I know that people mock them and mock their games a lot of the time, but they make fun games. I love the Far Cry series, even like the later titles. I love them. They're fun. They're just good, solid open world adventures. And Assassin's Creed does incredible historical recreations. I hope for nothing but the best for this game.
Historical fiction is a legit genre that needs a little bit more love, and kind of like Wes said, even though they play it fast and loose, I think it's, like you said, it's a worthwhile venture.
Yeah, I haven't been into like it's been a while since I've been into the series, but I was there from the beginning. Like I played the first game, I played 2 and all the other kind of Ezio trilogy games, and I was already burnt off at the franchise at that point. And there's been a lot going on since then, but I do remember even back then, like kind of like an Assassin's Creed in Japan being like something that fans really, really wanted. So this has been like a long time kind of coming in terms of like what fans have kind of wanted from the series in terms of like a setting that seems really cool to support like the kind of gameplay the series is known for, the stealth gameplay. But the thing is, like, since then we've gotten Ghost of Tsushima, which is like a really good open world, almost Assassin's Creed style stealth action game with amazing combat for an open world game. And so I guess like a big question mark with Shadows is like, how is it going to separate itself from Ghost of Tsushima to kind of like better define its existence? And I guess like 2 ways that I think this game needs to come through with is like, one, like the art, having like more of an RPG framework is going to be a really important part towards like making it more of a narrative experience than Ghost of Tsushima was, at least in terms of its systems. And also that historical accuracy, like giving like a really fleshed out setting, doing that kind of virtual tourism that Ubisoft has gotten a lot of praise for. If it can nail those 2 things and build the experience around that, then I think this will be like something worth checking out.
Yeah, I will be very interested to see how this game plays in Japan, because it is it's a game set in Japan that's being developed by a Western developer. Mm-hmm. So we will see how it goes. But I mean, based on everything I've seen, game looks great. Looks like the style and the gameplay could be pretty tight. It follows up on the Assassin's Creed story. So they might have a hit here. I really hope they do. I genuinely hope they do. Okay, let's move on now to, I'm going to combine the next 2 games because they're both Atelier games. So the Atelier series has been going on for years. Des is not here to talk about it. Des is our Atelier reviewer. I just give all of them to him. But we have two coming out. So there's Atelier Yumiya, The Alchemist of Memories and the Envisioned Land, that's coming out on March 21st. And we have Atelier Reslerana, The Red Alchemist and the White Guardian. Good God, these things have long titles. So they're traditional JRPGs. They have great art design, usually quite a bit of narrative depth. I do not have any particular attachment to this series. I know other folks do. Is anyone excited for these two games? Or even just one of them?
I'm definitely looking forward to Yumiya as kind of the next one, and the start of the next sub-series. That's always a good jumping on point. Mm-hmm. And Ryza really evolved the series gameplay in a pretty significant way, especially when it comes to combat. It's a lot more dynamic and active, and they tend to be more willing to make those kinds of risks when they jump into a new sub-series. So I'm really curious to see how Yumiya is gonna pan out. I think hopefully fans have been pretty happy with the way that it's going, because it looks like it's kind of going to be following a similar, like, let's make things a little bit more active, a little bit more demand a little bit more of your attention while you're out there in the field. Mm-hmm. Hopefully they just don't oversimplify the alchemy that so many fans are coming here for, which is a concern with every new release. Is okay, we know alchemy might get a little bit less complex, but hopefully not so much that it's defanged, Yeah,
alchemy being the foundations that the series is known for.
It's very much the ground that the series is built on. So hopefully we get some very good alchemy, but I'll definitely be checking it out close to day one, if not day one.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else get some like Xenoblade vibes from the exploration? I was just watching the trailer and just like the way that it was positioning.
It looks a lot grander in scope for a lot of the maps, which is something I haven't seen near as much in Atelier games, which is pretty exciting. And yes, it does serve a little bit of Xenoblade now that you mention it.
Well, and it looks like there's a little bit of platforming. There was a motorbike at one point that I saw. I was just like, right on.
Which might be the most exciting part of it.
Right.
Plus, the character designs are absolutely gorgeous, which is always a big thing for Gust games. So there should be a lot to love in here.
Yeah, these two games for sure are a small theme for me, where I am pumped for everybody who's excited for them. But like Jono said, I don't know if I have a personal attachment to them yet. The music in the trailer is super cute. Shout out Rhythm Encounter.
Yeah, I'm really excited for people who are excited for these games. I am absolutely going to give them to Des to review, but personally, I just don't really have any personal connection to the series. Okay, let's move on to a game that I do actually have a tremendous amount of excitement for, because it's right up my alley. Avowed. Now, I talked about Avowed extensively a few weeks ago on Random when we did the preview, so I'm not going to do that again. So I'll open the gates here. Anyone excited for Avowed? It's coming out on February 18th.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Zach, you are not excited for Avowed. You were the only one who didn't go, ooh.
Poor Zach.
Zach, you
I
are
didn't get a
a
rump out of that guy.
stick in the mud.
Zach's a hater.
With the hating.
No hate.
No,
Just
I'm kidding.
not a huge Western RPG guy.
You got to be visited by the three ghosts of Obsidian.
That's the thing, is sometimes I feel like even if you're not much on Western RPGs, Obsidian often gives you a reason to sit up and look at it, because they don't have... It's hard to put this in a way that sounds positive, but it is to me. But they often don't have such a wide field of freedom. There's a little bit more focus on like what you're trying to do, and you're not going and like picking up every minute little thing sitting on the ground. Things that you're going and collecting tend to be a lot more meaningful, and the quests tend to be a lot more driven. And that's something that I've always adored about Obsidian, and the chance for them to do something a little bit more cribbing a lot from Elder Scrolls, but in their own kind of more concentrated format with their really strong foundation of storytelling. This could be absolutely amazing.
That's where my hope lies. I mean, it is a continuation of the Pillars games, the Pillar of Eternity games. So it's very much an established universe that has a massive fan base. So I'm really hoping this thing is a hit, because God knows Xbox could use one.
Yeah, I mean, like the Outer Worlds was already kind of like their more AA, smaller scope approach to like making a Fallout game, while also like infusing it with like a really like distinct personality and look. And I feel like Avowed is just them trying to do like a very similar approach to like making their own sort of Elder Scrolls game. And I mean, personally, I feel like the smaller scope is always welcome as someone who's now like doesn't have all the time in the world to play games. So like the fact that Obsidian is making these smaller scope but still like managed to feel like kind of big RPGs is very welcome for me, and to like include all their classic great writing and quest design and things like that. I'm
What do
pretty
you mean it's
excited
not a
for it.
176-hour game? Jeez.
Yeah,
What a
not worth my money. But yeah, and I will even say, like, when Avowed first got announced, like, I wasn't like super excited for it, because even though I'm like a huge Obsidian fan, I tend to like kind of their weirder stuff a bit more. Things like Tyranny and Pentiment. I like when they experiment even more. So like the fact that they rely on like kind of these more established Bethesda style games for Outer Worlds and Avowed, I still really appreciate those games, but I do hope at the same time that they get back to making those weirder titles at the same time. But with that said, I'm still excited to see how this turns out. The combat looks really nice for a first person game too.
It does. I'm super excited about this. This might be, up until very recently, this was one of probably my most anticipated title of 2025. Something else has taken that crown away, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the episode. But for now, let's move on to a sequel to, I don't know if it would be called a cult hit, but certainly a popular game that has been getting more and more buzz over the last few years since it was released in 2022, and that is Citizen Sleeper. So we are getting Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector. Citizen Sleeper was a kind of a almost cyberpunky RPG with a lot of dice rolling and a lot of questions about basically what is human and robots and indentured servitude and lots of other things. This game is going to be picking up on that kind of very detail-oriented systems-driven survival mechanics, and it's going to have recruitable companions with new missions. It's going to have a mobile home base. It's going to retain very much the very iconic visual style of Citizen Sleeper. And this is not this game. Citizen Sleeper is a game that, again, has been very prominently featured on my backlog for the last few years that I really, really need to get around to playing. And I mean, it sounds like they've been managed to put together this extremely detailed expansion sequel up for the game in only 3 years, which is pretty impressive. Is anyone here excited for Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector, or is a big fan of the first game?
I am both a big fan of the first game and hugely looking forward to the second one.
Yes, I knew that. I was setting the ball. I was giving you
thank you.
I was giving you a little underarm toss there for you to crack the ball into the bleachers.
Yeah, so I reviewed the first game for the site, was a really huge fan, and I got a chance to play the Citizen Sleeper 2 demo, and I really liked what I saw. Like, it still looks like, I mean, it's a game made basically by one person, so like there hasn't been any like huge overhaul in terms of like how the game looks or anything like that, but just the whole like cyberpunk vibe that they managed to set up. The writing is really sharp and like can at its best feel like that weird kind of like sensory sort of style to it that makes cyberpunk writing so like evocative and interesting, and adds a lot to like the otherwise kind of like basic sort of graphics, but you still get those like really nice character designs that show up in conversations. But by far, like the thing that stuck out most to me for the second game is the fact that you can like you're kind of like recruiting a crew. Like the first game had like consistent like characters that you're kind of doing like quests around and for in a very like traditional way, but this time it seems like you're able to like get them into your team, and then there's like these extra mission types called contracts, which are kind of set away from like the main sort of like hub zones where you do kind of like your daily routines, for like a very like tense sort of like contained space where that pushes like the resource management and the dice rolling that the gameplay is built around to kind of like its most like satisfying and intense level. Which was something that I felt was sort of missing in the second half of Citizen Sleeper 1, is like the intensity that the resource management can kind of create. And having these like missions where you're out with your crew and like trying to like get them to do things, you're doing things with your player character, and like it seems like whether you succeed or fail on these contracts can have ramifications for how the character stories or maybe even like the main story progress. So this is like exactly like the type of iteration that I think is going to add a lot to this game, and I'm very much looking forward to it.
My notes for this one say this looks like an Aleks ass RPG.
Thanks for thinking of me, Kyle.
You betcha.
Yeah, this is it's clearly there's clearly an appetite for systems-based RPGs like this, and this one is very highly anticipated by a lot of folks.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't played the first one yet, but my wife has, and she absolutely loves it, and she compares it to Disco Elysium a lot, and that's all I need to know. So I know I need to play it. It's just like Jono, it's on the list.
Yeah, Disco Elysium vibes for sure. Alex, I'm glad you pointed out that it looks like the crew members have a lot to do in this one, because that would be the one thing that would pull me in, versus the first one.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. Who doesn't love companions in an RPG?
Yeah. Yeah, every RPG needs a companion.
Team building, man.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think this looks great, and super excited for it to come out and see what it's like. Let's move on now to a game that I would say almost came out of nowhere for a lot of folks. Is Clair Obscur Expedition 33. So this it really hit the mainstream around the end of August, and with the trailer, and people just got like, "Holy crap, what's this?" Because holy crap, what's this? So it's a turn-based RPG. It has a lot of strategic elements, including timed hits, dodges, stuff like that. Incredible star-studded cast. It's set in a fantasy version of, I guess, medieval Europe. And it is just so gorgeous. Looks amazing. A lot of the buzz about it, it says that they were very much inspired by Final Fantasy and Persona, which, some people like those games. And it's from a developer. They're a French developer. And I think that people are really freaking excited for this thing. It looks awesome.
Count me among that number. Yeah, I mean, I think that when I look at it, I'm like, I feel like you might be building a game for me. Thank you. It's like the combat looks like
How
exactly.
kind of them. It's always nice when they do that.
Yeah. The combat looks like exactly like my level of like the strategy that's going to be involved with it looks great. Looks phenomenal. The music sounds incredible so far. It's just and obviously it was sort of like the first thing that we saw Ben Starr in after Final Fantasy 16, and he's now going to be in like 50 new games. But that also was a selling point for me. It looks fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm something of a sucker for like developers outside of Japan trying their hands at more like traditionally Japanese styled RPGs. The much more Eastern dominated field. Games like Lord of the Rings: The Third Age or Battle Chasers. They absolutely fascinate me. I love the idea of like a more Western style of cinematography being married with the gameplay style I grew up with, because they're the two storytelling types are very informed by history. So it's interesting to see something a little bit more Hollywood come through there, especially with the cast. I was most excited about Charlie Cox. I fell in love with him when Stardust first came out, and ever since, everything he's done, I adore the man, and I'm very excited that he and a lot of other heavy hitters are coming into this. And really, it's a beautiful looking game. It's a fascinating looking combat system. I really hope this delivers what it looks like it's going to deliver.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have opinions on the time button approach?
I mean, it depends on where you're coming from. I personally like it in turn-based combat. I think it adds an extra element of engagement. Just like you can't just autopilot. You need to actually pay a little bit of attention.
I mean, it depends on how well it's integrated, right? I mean, it's so much of it is about like, does it feel right? You think about like a dragon. I feel like the time button presses feel right. Super Mario RPG, the button presses feel right. Whereas something like, I don't know, Crease Tales, which is a game I like, but like the button presses didn't always feel right. So it can be a make or break thing for me, but it's a question of how well it's implemented.
Yeah, we certainly don't need a Legend of Dragoon level button presses.
No,
So as long as it's not that, I'll
seeing if someone went there.
I'm open to it.
The exploration looks sick. Like I'm kind of just echoing what everybody else said, but in the gameplay demo that I saw, there was some zipping around up to find a little treasure, and swords and pistols. Here for that.
Well, we're going to find out. Hopefully, we'll find out next year. Incidentally, that we should put a disclaimer on this episode that oftentimes some of these games appear on more than one list because sometimes release dates move.
Are we going to talk about Granblue Fantasy Relink today?
I thought about it. I really did think about it. I really did think about just adding it and having us, as a joke, having us all talk about it like it's going to come out next year. And then I realized the episode was too long, and I was like, it's kind of an in-joke that I think is funny, but maybe other people don't. I'm sure it'll come out any year now, though. Okay, let's move on now to something that, speaking of games that people have been waiting a while for.
Oh my god.
Deltarune Chapters 3 and 4. So I'm kind of excited for this because earlier this year, I actually did manage to fill in a significant gap in my backlog, which was Undertale. I don't want to say this on this podcast, but I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. I don't like Earthbound. I really don't like Earthbound. I've disliked Earthbound. I've tried playing it 4 times. And earlier this year, I was like, okay, I hate this. I'm just going to grit my teeth and finish it because I need to finish this stupid game.
We're all allowed to be wrong sometimes.
Yeah, everyone has really poor taste from time to time.
Yeah,
exactly. Absolutely. So I beat Earthbound. And I was hoping right up until the last button press that, like, hey, maybe this last button press will change my opinion about the game. And it didn't.
Oh, the ending is so good, though.
Yeah.
I've been putting off playing Undertale for years because Undertale, though it's certainly not, connected to it, it's very much inspired by in so many ways. And I played Undertale and I just adored it. It was so good. I don't need to go on about people why Undertale is good. There's enough. Go on YouTube, type in Undertale. You'll find lots of it. But then following Undertale, another kind of spin-off alternate reality sort of thing was released called Deltarune Chapters 1 and 2. And we've been waiting for years and years for Chapters 3 and 4 to come out. And we have confirmation that 3, maybe 4 will be coming out in 2025. So, quirky characters, turn-based battles with bullet hell mechanics, pixel art. I know that a lot of people are super, super excited about this. The previous 2 parts of this were free. This one is expected to be released as a paid bundle. Is there anyone here who is excited to finish this, the Deltarune saga?
Oh, I mean, I don't think this will be the finish. It's actually not clear what the finish of Deltarune's going to be. He has
if there ever will be. Really.
He has plans for through 7 chapters at least or something. So one of the things that's amazing about Deltarune is that it sort of inverts a lot of the thematic concepts of Undertale in really interesting ways, and that I have absolutely no idea where it's going, none whatsoever. I really like Deltarune a lot. I think it's amazing. I think in some ways it's more mature than Undertale, whereas Undertale has sort of more of a purity to it. But I think that the length of the development cycle is really interesting to me, in terms of even from 1 to 2, you can see him learning and expanding and growing. And I'm really curious to see what he does with 3 and 4. I thought the first 2 parts were brilliant. I'm sure I'll think the next 2 parts are also brilliant.
Undertale was released in 2015. And then he spent a few years after that, basically porting it to every single thing. I think it plays on my microwave. And then this came out in when was it? When was Chapter 1 released? It was released in...
It was 2019.
2018. End of October 2018. And then Chapter 2 was released in 2021. So yeah, we can probably expect this based on this pattern at any point in the year, really.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to playing parts of Deltarune all over again, because this is just going to be my approach to this game, I guess, where I played Chapter 1 when it came out. When Chapter 2 came out, I played Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 out. And then now that Chapters 3 and 4 are coming out, I'm probably going to play Chapters 1 to 4. And it's going to be a great time, and I'm going to love it. And I'll try out some of the alternate routes that they have going on, because, most people who know Undertale would know that there's kind of a light side route and a very, very dark side route.
I could not do it. I could not. I tried, and within the first 5 minutes, I was like, nope, can't do it. Nope.
It's so intense, and so well done. But yeah, they have not exactly that going on this time, but I know that there is an alternate kind of path you can take in Chapter 2 that is also a pretty dark twist.
I wonder if he'll manage to follow that up through 3 and 4, because it's so different.
Exactly. So maybe if anything, it'll be self-contained sort of storylines within each chapter that you can do 1 or 2 different routes of, which could be one way to make it more feasible, I guess. Because otherwise it seems because Deltarune is kind of an isekai, you have the world where the characters normally live, and then the world of Deltarune seems to be this realm fueled by their imagination. Maybe it'll just work on a more of an episodic basis, and you can it won't have to have huge ramifications on the regular world from there. Is where I'm sort of seeing it could potentially go. But mostly this game is like super fun to play. Chapter 2 was just full of creative gameplay choices that made it a blast. And no matter how many times Toby Fox wants to release Deltarune again, I guess I'll play the whole thing.
Okay, well, this is continuing a long-running series. For those who... Okay, let me put it this way. Certain game series move on. Certainly when they were released on like 16-bit or 32-bit systems, the first titles sometimes bear very little resemblance to the later titles. And one of these, of course, would be the Persona series. Revelations Persona was released on the PlayStation 1, and people absolutely adored it. But like over the years, certainly it's evolved into the hyper-kinetic, super astonishing UI designed masterpiece that it is today. But there are folks who crave some of the old style gameplay and graphics, and for those people, we have Demon School. So this is going to be a tactical RPG. It's heavily inspired by early Persona games, isometric visuals, retro aesthetics, and it's set in the 1990s. So this is going to employ a combat system that's very much inspired by chess. There are strategic rewinds and buffs. Much like the Persona series, there's going to be relationship building, lots of narrative depth, and it's going to be mixing together humor and horror. As someone who has not played any of the Persona series, let alone the original Persona, this is not a title that has tickled my nostalgia button. Wow, that sounded dirty. I'm going to rephrase that. This is not a title that has... Oh, now I can't think of another way to put it.
No, that's all I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's all I'm thinking. Okay, I think I'm just going to leave that in there like that then.
Roll with it.
Tickle the nostalgia button. Going with it. There's my Christmas present to everyone out there. Enjoy. So everybody else, taking a look at Demon School and the graphics and the style and everything, is this tickling any of your buttons?
It seems sort of like a Disgaea Persona. Just like kind of the way that the field looks presented.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of oh shoot, now it's escaping me. Yeah, what's that cell shaded strategy RPG with the, oh my god, where it's like Oregon Trail, but it's not.
Oh, I have no idea.
All right, well, just a sec. We can cut this part.
I'm trying to blank on that one.
Yeah, we've suddenly changed this into one of Solosi's quiz shows, where all of my thoughts and all of my knowledge just suddenly go mysteriously missing whenever somebody asks me a question.
Yeah, I played the demo of Demon School, and it certainly tickled my button a little bit.
Oh no, that's even worse.
Sorry. But yeah, it's really cool. I think like one thing, like in terms of like the tactics combat is, it almost reminded me less of like things like Disgaea and FF Tactics, and even like Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor, which otherwise the game reminded me a lot of. And it felt more like Into the Breach. I don't know if many of y'all played that, but it's like very, very like tight sort of like tactics maps. And it's like almost like you're not kind of like sending units like throughout this like sprawling map and like trying to just find like the most effective way of winning the battle. It's almost like more puzzle like, where you have to like look at like the special skills of all your characters. All your characters have like really unique kits. And so like from there, like you can like set up like one character to like hit like an enemy like backwards a couple tiles, and then like set that up for like another character to do like kind of like an AoE kind of attack, and has like this very like puzzle box almost feel to it that I found extremely satisfying. And the battles never dragged. It was all like very well paced, and then it's obviously also paced out with this more like Persona 3 to 5 kind of schedule, where you have like a weekly schedule. You do like school stuff during the week. You have to like pick like different like ways to spend your time. You have like side quests. You build relationships with the different characters. We did like a little Q&A with the devs that will be coming out soon, where they clarified there's going to be like over 10 characters. So like you'll have lots of different like party compositions and like kits to like play around with, and it just seems like it's going to be like a very, very satisfying tactical RPG with just enough kind of like light social sim elements to add flavor to the experience. I'm pretty excited for this one.
Yeah, it looks great. I mean, it looks like it's a throwback, but it looks like a throwback in the best possible way.
Yeah.
Okay, speaking of throwbacks, let's talk about something that Zach probably is extremely excited about, considering the review that he recently wrote for the site, and that is Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D Remake. Now, Zach, I do not mean to. I know I shouldn't be like, I should be like a parent and I'm like, I don't have a favorite child as the review manager. But as the review manager, you probably wrote my favorite review of the year with your Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D remake.
Thank you.
It was so touching, and it was personal. It was just a really, really solid piece of writing. You gave it a 90, and you have such a personal connection with this game. I'm assuming that you're quite excited that Dragon Quest 1 and 2 are getting a similar treatment next year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Obviously, I mean, Dragon Quest 3 is is an easier win to some degree. You know what I mean? Like, Dragon Quest 3 is just like a better game than Dragon Quest 1 and 2.
Well, it's the culmination of everything the first two games attempted to do.
And so I'm really curious to see what they do in particular with Dragon Quest 2 to sort of make it more manageable than it was originally. But obviously, otherwise, I think that we're going to see sort of the same style in terms of the HD 2D look, which I think they do really well here, and it fits the game. I think the balancing worked really well there. And so I'm curious to see how they flesh some things out. There were some things that I think were kind of obvious you could flesh out in Dragon Quest 3, like stuff with Ortega. Whereas with Dragon Quest 1 and 2, it's less obvious. And so I think that I'm hoping they kind of experiment a little bit and kind of push the boundaries of the original. Not, to the point where it's not what the original was anymore, but that they do some of that Ortega stuff that they did in Dragon Quest 3 here. And I'll be curious to see how it shakes out. But I know that we have some other Dragon Quest fans here too, like Wes.
Hello there. It really does sound like they're going to expand and connect the original trilogy a lot more, and that's why they released it in this order. So I definitely expect some expansion on the story. But a lot of the gameplay things they did in Dragon Quest 3 Remake are really going to work well here too, I think. Having things to find like on the world map and dungeons that are new and different, having things like monster collection, like they can add things like that all day long, and make the game a little bit more rewarding to not just play, but to go and explore and experience like they did with Dragon Quest 3. I also think, I adore Dragon Quest 1. It's the game that taught me how to read. I am deeply, deeply invested in that game specifically. But so many of the problems that folks have had with Dragon Quest 2 over the years of it, lacking depth and the crazy difficulty spikes that are, legendarily the hardest part of any Dragon Quest game. It stands to have a lot to gain there, in that you can fix difficulty spikes compared to a lot of other things relatively easily.
There's nothing like the second entry of a series on an NES game, on the NES, to just be like, holy crap, what were they thinking?
Yeah, I mean, it's like their ambition outstripped their design with Dragon Quest 2, and
Final Fantasy 2 and Link's Ventures of Link, and it's just of Castlevania 2. Yeah.
And I've played some remakes of 2 that certainly make Roan less of a pain, but it's still like a pain. And so, yeah, I'm curious to see what they do.
I think they stand to gain a lot here, because if you look at like any Dragon Quest ranking, 1 and 2 are going to be near the bottom for 90% of the lists you look at. But Dragon Quest 3 HD is so good, and they did so many smart changes just to make the experience of playing it a lot more pleasurable. On the nostalgia button. I
regret everything.
These are probably the Dragon Quest games that stand to gain the most from a remake, and I'm really excited to see what they do, because after what they've been doing with remakes lately, I've got to think they've got something smart planned for how to bring these up to speed.
I just realized I was going to cut nostalgia button, but I think it's so tightly woven in with this episode's
It's part of the lore.
It's part of the lore. If I cut it, it's just not going to make any sense, so I've got to leave it all in. Does anyone else have anything to say about these two games?
Yeah, I want to echo the writing done by Zach. I was rereading the review today for Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D remake and got some welly eyes. I have not a similar experience, but I have kind of my own feelings that reading brings up. within the last year or so. But on the game front, I'm somebody who has been very public at RPGFan about how I've missed the boat on a lot of those original Dragon Warriors, and I'm just not somebody who would have gone back to pursue the pain that is the early NES and SNES games. So I really feel like kind of Square are the target audience for these remakes that are quality of life upgrades, new coats of paint, the ability to go back to one of the biggest JRPG franchises ever and see where it all began, and they want to make it more tightly connected. Like, hell yeah, sign me up.
Yeah, my experience playing all three of these games was on the Game Boy Color with those remakes, and they are very good remakes.
Some of the best versions out there.
But I suspect that these are probably going to be a little bit more expansive than those. I just suspect.
Stands to reason, one would think.
Especially because, like, I know a lot of, like, Japanese devs who were, like, coming up around this time, like, really love Dragon Quest II, despite a lot of its flaws, because it was, like, the first RPG to really push more storytelling elements into it.
Yeah, it's it tickles the nostalgia button.
Exactly. So if they could actually, like, make something out of, like, that very high regard people have of, like, its memory being, like, this more narratively sophisticated game by adding some more characterization to its three characters, I think that could be one way that the HD 2D remake could really establish, like, an identity for itself, while also, like, being very loyal to what that game really represents for a lot of people.
Yeah. It's going to be, it might be some people's first, I don't know. Here's a good question for everyone. So next year we have the HD2 remakes of 1, 2, and 3. Where would you recommend people start at that point? Because clearly at the moment, like, if you want to get started with the Dragon Quest series and you've never played one before, you dump 3 in front of them. But like next year, do you recommend that they play them chronologically? Do you recommend they play 3 first? Like, what do you do?
I think it's a hard question to answer at this point for me. It just depends on what they do. Because granted, like Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3, like, there's a very clear progression in terms of gameplay. So from that perspective, I think that it might be a little challenging to go back to 1 and sort of the simplicity of 1. But if they really sort of create this through line of a story, which would make sense, then maybe you start with 3. I just don't know at this point.
Yeah. Well, I certainly hope that's the case, because these are foundational to the JRPGs in general. If it wasn't for these 3 games, we would not have JRPGs as we know it today. All right, let's move on now to a game that is a very, very late arrival to our list. So late that I still have to write it because it was only announced a few days ago, and that is Elden Ring Night Rain. So, Elden Ring, everyone knows what Elden Ring is. No one expected there to be a cooperative roguelike spin-off with a randomized map to come out to be announced at the Game Awards. This was a massive surprise to everyone. And considering what people know about Souls-like and the mythology that's come up around FromSoft over the last few years, this is a departure. But it's a departure that I think a lot of people are super excited about. So instead of it being like an expansive world that you explore, they're going to be basically kind of session length sort of things. There's going to be dynamic maps with shifting enemy placement. There'll be enemies from other FromSoft games, but it's still going to have, the same level of challenge. It's still technically going to be a Souls-like. You just get to play the Souls-like with your friends now. And holy crap, people are real excited about this.
This might actually be the first Souls-like since Bloodborne that I am genuinely, like, excited and think I'm going to sink some serious time into. Because not only, is co-op really appealing in a game like this for someone like me who doesn't thrive on challenge, not necessarily scared of it, but it's not something that makes a game appeal to me. The idea of 1, playing with friends, and 2, this new structure that is intended to take the Souls experience and supercharge it. You have, 3 boss fights every time you go through, 15-minute days where you're trying to gather gear and level up and all that fun stuff. You're streamlining, your leveling process. You can jam through auto level ups that distribute properly. You have all these different starting kits that have unique abilities that differentiate those starting kits a lot more. All of this adds up to this really cool, like, somewhere between like a roguelike, Hades experience where each run you're making snap decisions, and something like a Dark Tide or Vermintide or whatever you want to call it. This almost squad shooter style. Okay, over the course of this, we need to hit, you know, very specific milestones and accomplish work, but instead of against big hordes, it's a big old Dark Souls boss that you can tackle with your friends. This stands to be, I think, an easier entry into the style of game, just because of that heightened pace and the fact that dying it's not such a big suffering point. You don't die and feel like, oh god, there went my last half hour or hour or whatever of my life. I got to get all my souls back. It's just, well, we lost that run, let's try another one.
Yeah.
Like I'm a big fan of the way that the series has been able to incorporate like multiplayer functionality into like an otherwise like single player type experience. But that said, I've never been someone who has taken too much advantage of the online components, but the fact that here they're just like completely dedicating, like, here's just like a multiplayer Souls experience, here's Souls Monster Hunter, just sounds awesome. It sounds like such a good time to like just get some friends together and just like use all this expertise we've gathered on the series together to like just conquer these challenges together. Like, that is awesome. This game is almost guaranteed to be a good time.
Yeah, I mean, I think it looks fantastic. Like sort of the cameo bosses as well. When I was watching it, I was like, wait a second, I thought this was Elden Ring, not Dark Souls 3. Give me that fight again. So yeah, I mean, it all seems like you can sort of create like sort of an all-star list where it's like leaning into elements of the game that I really like. Like, I'm really into sort of the boss run element of it, but then that idea that you're gaining and going back and gaining and going back. It's actually very much like I'm surprised by the roguelike element of it, but to some degree, like it makes sense with the way the games have always worked. And so, you know, because of sort of that idea of you go, you gather resources, you get stronger, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that it will work really well. I'm a little disappointed that it sounds like if you do multiplayer, it's only like 3-person, because I would very much like to play this with my wife, and like, and so I hope maybe they can give you like an AI companion for the third person, but that's a little unclear.
Now, Zach, here's what you do. You download Field. It's the non-monogamous dating app. And you create a profile in it that just says, looking for a third specifically for Elden Ring Night Rain. And put that out there. And you just need to find a third. It's great.
Seeking a FromSoft unicorn.
Seeking a FromSoft unicorn. Yes. And that will work. I guarantee it'll work. I mean, you're not wrong. Yeah, just whatever you do not put tickle the nostalgia button on your profile, because that would turn out something very different. Okay, with that, let's move on from this.
Seeking a third to tickle our nostalgia buttons. Sounds great.
Now we have enough nostalgia tickling on this podcast, I think. There's 5 of us, so let's move on now to. You know what? This is going to be a controversial step. The next game is Fable. I am going to put my chip down on the table right now and say there is no way this is going to be released in 2025. No chance at all. This has 2026 delayed to 2027 like printed all over it.
I would be shocked. If we saw this in 2025.
Mm-hmm.
My notes literally say, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yes. So let's talk about something that actually does have a chance of being released in 2025. And holy crap, am I excited for this prospect. Hades 2. So Hades 2 is now in early access. Many people out there know Hades 1 famously was in early access for a good long while, partially because of the pandemic. If anyone is looking for a really, really great documentary on YouTube, the Hades Development Journal series is so amazing. It's so great. And it will really give you a fascinating insight into probably how they are handling the early access for Hades 2 as well, providing that, you know, they had to deal with the pandemic the first time around. So hopefully we get this one a little quicker than we got Hades. I really would like to see this in 2025 because I don't want to play it in early access. I want to get a lot of people love early access. I've tried early access games. I just find them to not click with me. I feel like there's a block inside my own head that stops me from enjoying them to the level I should be enjoying them because I know I'm not going to get the full experience. So yeah, Hades 2 maybe coming out in 2025. Really, really hope so. And if it does, this thing is going to explode. talking about Greek mythology.
Yeah, so I've played Hades 1, and it's like it's still my only roguelike that I've ever really played. It's like sort of a straight roguelike. And my wife has played the early access of Hades 2, and it's already in early access, already larger and bigger than Hades was. Just like the level of sort of customization, and also you get like some different paths you can go down. It sounds amazing. It sounds like they're still respecting what was good about the first Hades. Everything I've heard about the early access makes it sound amazing, and I absolutely loved Hades. So yes, I'm also very excited for this.
Yeah, I adore Hades. You know, I was kind of getting into roguelikes when Hades came out, but that like ultimately I think is what sold me on the concept, because it married roguelike plus storytelling plus, you know, everything that we know we love from the developer. The music, the visuals, everything.
I love Supergiant. I just love Supergiant.
Yeah,
Supergiant don't miss. Like even if some people consider Pyre a miss, like give it a shot. It's better than you think.
Yeah, they're only 15 years old.
It's ridiculous, the catalog that they have.
Yeah.
But Hades really absolutely won me over, and I don't play games in early access, so Hades 2 is going to feel so fresh and so new. But what really got me excited for this was, you know, it's been a bit of time since the original Hades. I loved it. I still maintain how much I love it, but I haven't gone back and played it in a hot minute. But this year, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splintered Fate came out on consoles, which is very much a Ninja Turtles Hades clone, but with that Ninja Turtle skin and couch co-op, which is a game changer for the record. And I've spent months of this year playing through it over and over again with my son. And really, as much as I loved it as a standalone experience and as a Turtles nostalgia button for me, it made me desperately want Hades 2 like today, because that notion of how you build your character over the course of a run in Hades, and how if you build in specific ways, you can build up to like more impressive powers later, you know, combining the skills of two gods into dual powers further on. It's just pure joy. And it's a hard game to put down. I can only imagine what that plus is going to do to my life.
Yeah, this thing's going to decimate whatever productivity I was planning for 2025. If it comes out in 2025, there is a good chance it will not. There's a good chance that it will be delayed until 2026, just because they want to put an extra layer of polish onto it. And frankly speaking, again, Supergiant Games, go at it. If that's what you need to do, have at it. Don't care. Take however much time you want, because this is going to be something.
100% agreed. Take your time, y'all. Seriously.
Okay, let's move on now to, I'm going to package the two next games together because they are, they're the Trails games. So The Legend of Heroes, Trails in the Sky, the first, and Trails Through Daybreak 2. So I think of the Trails series a little bit like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in the sense that there are so many of them. They have continuing storylines, characters, overlapping themes, that it is really, really hard for me to like figure out an entry point. And in that spirit, the remake of Trails in the Sky, it's a full 3D remake of the original, which was isometric. And this looks like a real good entry point for Legend of Heroes, Trails, for the Trails series.
I'm not the world's biggest Trails fan, but I've definitely tried it a whole lot. And at least through Trails in the Sky first and second chapter, I really did adore those two games. I think that they are something absolutely special. Being a fresh starting point means you're not missing anything in the background, because that's all to come after you play that one. And how far Falcom has come visually since not only those days, but even just a few years ago with the Cold Steel games, makes this feel a lot more like a modern looking game. It looks like they're keeping the gameplay foundation kind of where it needs to be with the original, but it's just absolutely gorgeous to look at. And I think this will, if they pull this off, I always have to put like a disclaimer, I feel like, on any game that comes out, but Falcom generally doesn't miss for its fans. I think this might be kind of the the crossover success that they need to get the Trails series a little bit more mainstream attention.
Yeah. I played Cold Steel 1 and 2, and I was really soured on the end of 2, and then I started 3, and then I was like, who are all these people? And everyone's like, you have to go back and play Trails in the Sky, and also this game, and also I'm like, oh my gosh. And so I have it on my Steam Deck. I have all 3 of the first Trails in the Sky games. I've been like, yes, I'm going to go play them. And then I think about the fact that I have to pay, I don't know, 17 games or however many it is at this point, and then I'm like, and then I hear that like it kind of it's up and down and mediocre at times in sort of the later series. And I'm like, well, I don't really want to do that. But I think with this new remake, it's almost certain that I will end up picking it up day one and checking it out just to kind of finally maybe make my way through the series slowly.
I am a huge Trails fan. I got into it a handful of years ago with the Cold Steel games, and I'm kind of somebody who's a sucker for like a lot of through lines. I like to read, when I read books, I like to read kind of more involved epic series that kind of have a lot of payoff later on. So if that's anybody's kind of similarity, I would highly encourage the Trails series. But kind of like has been said, the Trails to the Sky games just aren't super easily accessible unless you have something like a Steam Deck or a PC account. So for any console gamers, it's been very difficult for us to go back and get a lot of the context. So as a Trails fan and as somebody who has been really interested in how Estelle and those characters got formed their hero journey, I couldn't be more excited for Trails fans for Trails in the Sky to come out. And then I haven't played through Daybreak yet, but I know Audra, who is another big Trails fans, shout out, really enjoyed it and is looking forward to that second one coming out. The Daybreak series is in Calvard, which is a sort of a whole different empire within the Trails universe, and so that's another decent jumping on point for anybody who wants to try the kind of the most, the most modern version of the Trails universe. I can totally sympathize with how intimidating it can be to try to think that you have to do all of them. So I'm really appreciative that they're bringing out kind of that first one just to give people the original, chance or choice.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's the MCU. It's playing a Trails game, as I understand it, is very similar to like going in to watch the latest Doctor Strange movie, and then it's like the Illuminati shows up, and you're expected to know like, what the hell is Patrick Stewart doing here?
Yeah, it's a fair comparison, I think.
Like, why does Peggy Carter have a shield? She's not, and like you're just like, it's weird to people who are not like embedded in the lore of this larger narrative. I'm personally someone who loves the MCU and who is a huge comic fan, so I love the larger narrative, but I totally understand the comic book fatigue concept being like, we need to do so much homework to understand where this is coming from. So them releasing literally a jumping on point that is their original jumping on point is a fantastic idea.
Yep, agreed.
Okay, speaking of a game a game series that has, first off, quite a few jumping on points, but second off, like 19 entries. It's one of my favorites. It's Like a Dragon. We have another Like a Dragon. Yes, we have another Like a Dragon game coming out this year. It's another Gaiden, so it's going to be Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. This is the most unexpected at the same time. Oh yeah, that tracks. This makes complete sense. Years ago, I was thinking like, how the hell are they going to use Honolulu? Years ago, it came out earlier this year. What the hell am I talking about? I was seriously like, how are they going to reuse Honolulu? That's such a specific location that's like far away from their usual stories. Like, how are they going to reuse it? Because they have to reuse it. They put so much work into it. Turns out they were like, Majima has an eye patch. Pirates, we're putting him on a boat, and they're making a pirate-themed spin-off from Infinite Wealth. So unlike Infinite Wealth, we're not getting turn-based combat. It's going back to its action RPG roots. So we're getting real-time combat. But alongside that, we're going to be getting ship-to-ship naval battles. So they're going to be pulling a little bit from the Assassin's Creed series there. Aside from that, it's going to be the usual style of humor. There's going to be lots of karaoke. Really hoping that we get a new version of 24-Hour Cinderella. That'd be lovely. I am obviously very excited to play this game. I will always play more Yakuza. I do have a fervent wish that if this is the only Like a Dragon's title that comes out in 2025, I will be tremendously relieved. I'll just be like, okay, thank God. Just stop releasing 2 of these damn things a year. I don't care if you're like, oh, one of them is like half the size of the other one. I'm like, half the size of Like a Dragon game is still like 3 times the size of anything else. It takes up a lot of friggin' time. But yeah, super excited about this. It looks fun. It's coming out in February 21st.
It's a Yakuza game, and I'm on a podcast with Jono. No notes needed.
Yeah, it's fine.
I'm all over this thing. Especially, I don't know. I see a little dual swords pirate fighting style, and I'm excited. You give me Majima as a main character, I'm always happy. Like, this is the best way. I love the way that RGG is continuing the action lineage via these spin-offs, and especially when they like address the characters who were there in the action days and let Ichiban live in his turn-based world. I think that's a brilliant way to keep both lineages going.
I also will say, I really wish they would let these characters, I'm going to say grow up, but that's ridiculous. Majima is a 60-year-old man in this game.
No.
That makes me feel old as a person who only started playing a few years ago.
Like, if he is not using hair dye, I don't know. Like, at least in the last game, Kiryu, like, I know they gave him, there was a reason why he was losing mass and was looking so tired. No spoilers, but like, at least they gave him like gray hair. But like Majima, he looks spectacular. He looks he looks as good as he did in 1989.
There's some elder blood in that man.
I mean, he's just too insane to ever really age.
Exactly.
So, yeah. I mean,
I love the fact that his 2 styles in this game are, there's obviously the Mad Dog style of fighting, but there's also going to be the Sea Dog style of fighting.
It's perfect.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. I mean, like, I think that they have done a great job of sort of leveraging Majima since they realized how popular it was after Yakuza 5. And I just finished Kiwami 2 pretty recently, and his role in that game was excellent.
Greatest entrance of a Yakuza character ever.
Absolutely. And when he comes back for the cabaret stuff, I'm like, yes, give me more Cabaret Club in Like a Dragon. Yeah, it's I'll be purchasing it day one and playing it day one because Majima is I think Aleks on one of our draft episodes of Retro drafted Majima, and I was so mad because it was so perfect.
As best protagonist, which was only because he was 1 out of 2 protagonists in Yakuza 0, but now he finally gets his own game. Indeed. I am so hyped.
There's one thing that I think about Majima. It's he would live to 60 for sure.
I'm surprised. Frankly speaking, I'm a little surprised at Majima. The amount of crap this guy goes through in these games, that's
what I mean. Based on what I know about Majima, he would definitely live to be a pirate at 60.
Oh, indestructible. I mean, that's the kind of thing. Like, most of us, even in our like 30s and 40s, and we're like, the economy's doing terribly, and it's such a hard job to retrain. He's starting a whole new career at the age of 60 years old. Good for him. And he has had quite a few. He has had, let's see, so Yakuza Enforcer, then Cabaret Club Manager, then Yakuza, like, what would be Yakuza, like Kingpin, like in charge of the Yakuza, then owned his own construction company, and now he is a pirate. So yeah, this is gonna be a ride, I think, and I'm pretty excited for it because I have no problem with smaller Yakuza games. I was not a fan of Man Who Erased His Name for a variety of reasons, 90% of which was the plot, but I'm pretty excited for this one. Let's talk about something. Wow, there are some games on here that I look at and I'm like, wow, who's going to be excited about this one on the podcast? And the next one, I think that I can predict who's going to be excited about this one. Lunar Remastered Collection.
Who could you be talking about?
Wow, well, it could be anyone actually, because the Lunar series, we have some deep roots with the Lunar series. RPGFan was originally LunarNet. So like the first brick in the site is the Lunar series. And there have been some Lunar remakes over the last couple of years, mobile version. Actually, there are like 19 different Lunar remakes. And in fact, we did a kind of a semi-feature sort of thing with it earlier this year where we did reviews of all of the Silver Star versions.
Was that this year? Oh, God.
Was it this year? I think it was this year.
That feels like haunting. So long ago.
It's haunting, which was a cool thing. And then we just get this and it's like, holy crap. So there's going to be the remaster collection. It's going to include Silver Star Story Complete, which has gotten about 1,000 remakes, and Eternal Blue Complete, which has gotten 2 versions. It's going to feature updated visuals, some polished graphics, some modernized presentation with some quality of life improvements. I don't think anyone's going to object to that. It is going to be the first re-release of Eternal Blue since the PlayStation era, which I am super excited about because I like Eternal Blue more than I like Silver Star Story. And otherwise, it has everything you are going to love. It's going to have the iconic opening theme song. Super, super excited about this. Who else is excited for this on this podcast?
Obviously,
I'll go first. Actually,
fight.
Please, Zach. Please.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I mean, please do go on, Zach. Zach, you need to speak on this.
Zach, take it.
All right, fine. So obviously, I am extremely excited for both of these, and I like that they're using the Silver Star Story versions of it, which makes sense, or the PS1 ones, because I think that while the GBA version and the PSP version have things to recommend them, I feel like the one that like most people go back to is the PlayStation version, certainly not the Sega CD version. People are still occasionally complaining about my 75 that I gave the first Lunar a year ago, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I think that, the only criticism I have is that, the scripts are going to be different and the voice acting is going to be different. And the script, obviously, people go every which way on working designs. But the voice acting, it's just like so iconic. It's going to be hard for me to like listen to someone else as Galleon who's not John Truitt. But other than that, like it's just, it's great that it's coming to modern consoles. I think that for a lot of people, it's going to scratch a very particular kind of itch in terms of the nostalgia button and the ability to just play a game that is just like clean and simple and fun and has good character writing and isn't trying to do too much. And Eternal Blue kind of becomes it kind of inverts a lot of the themes of the first one in really good ways. And I'm really excited that people can play Eternal Blue who haven't had a chance to get their hands on it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what really appeals to me is Lunar's going to get a lot of new fans with this. That's my wild expectation. But so long as it's anywhere near decent, I think that this will convert quite a few people. Part of me, I mean, for one, the fact that Eternal Blue is getting a new release for the first time since PS1 is absolutely huge. I think that is the difference maker in this package. And yeah, I kind of like Eternal Blue more. That might be sacrilege to some folks, but I love that cast. But I think that there is a lot of benefit to a new translation. I agree on the voice acting; it's going to be kind of heartbreaking. But there are a lot of those, working designs isms that are probably going to miss more than they hit with most folks. Like a Bill Clinton joke ain't gonna really fly for anyone under the age of 30 in this economy. So I think this is going to be
a Bill Clinton joke in this economy.
I think this is going to
see how the economy goes in 2025.
Yeah, maybe we'll be begging.
I have an odd feeling whatever it is, it's definitely not going to be Bill Clinton's economy.
No. But yeah, if you've not heard of the Lunar series or have been thinking about it and not checking it out, this is one of the top releases to keep your eyes on for next year. No joke.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's where I would come in, like almost like copy and paste some of my Dragon Quest comments here, right? Like as somebody who is really late coming to a lot of these more classic JRPGs specifically, and for one that, like Jono mentioned, is an original brick of a community and of a website that I've really come to hold close to my heart, is something that I'm just kind of excited for, and honestly, this is basically what I think the remaster remake genre should be built for, right? Like bring all these classics, bring all these ones that have so much sentimental value, the ones that are just really hard to get your hands on, and reintroduce them to people like me who would have missed them for so many reasons and now are kind of desperate to see what all the fuss was about.
Yeah, I also didn't play either of these games like around the time that they came out. Just too young for that. But like with that said, like I have been wanting to like give the series another chance ever since I dissed Silver Star Story in front of Zach once. But that was the PSP version, which I understand isn't the...
You are not forgiven.
Isn't quite the same thing. And so I'm a little conflicted here, because on one hand it's like, yes, this is such a nice like package with both the games in it, to be able to like experience the series and give it another chance, but at the same time I'm also interested in just revisiting those PS1 versions again, because as I understand it, a lot of the appeal of this game, as you guys have been discussing, was that sort of lightning in a bottle at the time of its release. And so going into those versions with the historical context, I wonder if I'd end up appreciating it even more than what this remastered collection ends up being. But I guess I'll wait to see what the verdict is around the time of release.
seeing as there's actually this is the second duology remakes, remasters that we are talking about, why don't we jump around the list a little bit and we jump to another duology that's coming out this year, theoretically. Suikoden 1 and 2 HD remaster, Gate Rune and Dunin Unification Wars is coming out on March 6th. I suspect that there is somebody on this podcast who is pretty excited for these games. Is anyone on this podcast excited for these games?
It's at least 3 of us.
Is it me?
Buddy.
Is it?
Let's go.
Kyle, why don't you start this time?
Yeah.
I would chocobo love to. Suikoden is me. I am Suikoden. It is the thing that I hold closest to my heart in the RPG community. The first game is so underrated, and with a 2x battle speed, I think you might be able to play it in under 10 hours. There's just I hit it. I said earlier that I really love through lines and a sort of a plot that a character's arc that can kind of pay off in multiple ways, and Suikoden 1 and 2 has so many great moments like that, from main characters to minor ones. The series itself has really had a complicated history, but for people to be able to experience 1 and 2, for them to experience it in this HD 2D kind of sort of style, and for it to have quality of life, it's just I couldn't be more excited to re-experience this. And actually, I am someone now who has the sort of inside track on like Lunar and Dragon Quest, and I'll just be on the street corner, like handing out copies to everybody who walks by.
The release here kind of reminds me of it's a piece of writing that Aleks did a long time ago, where it was a final thoughts for Bloodborne, and he was talking about playing Lies of P and how it was exciting for him to go back to play Bloodborne and get back to the real boy. It was an amazing turn of phrase, Aleks, and I think about it a lot. And with this one, getting to play with Suikoden 1 and 2 again, after having played a Yuden Chronicle about a year ago, and getting to go back and play the real boys, I'm very excited. I'm very, very excited. I've played Suikoden 1 and 2 both at least a dozen times, and so I'm not going to probably get a whole lot new out of it, but I don't need that. The one thing that I really hope is new is the localization, which is definitely a touch point of weakness with these two games. Literally, if you just relocalize the first two games and then just release them as is, I'd be like, this is perfect. But the 2x battle speed is great for a battle system that's already snappy. One of the great things about Suikoden is how snappy it is. And I think that Suikoden 2 in particular, the backgrounds look really phenomenal. And it's Suikoden. I don't know what else to say that I haven't already said. I'm very excited.
It's such a fascinating duo to release, just because these two hit me like, while they are both very much of the same series, they hit me so differently, because Suikoden 1 is like my favorite really snappy RPG, the kind of thing you can finish in a dozen hours or less if you know what you're doing, even closer now most likely. So I recommend it to a lot of folks who are kind of new to RPGs, because you can finish this in the time that would take you to beat like a AAA shooter or whatever, but you can get a full nuanced RPG experience and one of the best plots out there. And then if you want to take a step further, like, what better way to get them even deeper into this world than a more hefty Suikoden 2? But now we can recommend those with translations that might actually make a bit more sense, which is super exciting. And yeah, visually absolutely gorgeous. But for me, these hit like almost on a very personal level, because these were experiences from my junior high and high school days, where I played the first 3 games with my best friend Matt, with him at the the old compact with a walkthrough, making sure I don't miss any recruits, and us formulating, okay, what's the best strategy, what's the best teams, what runes should we put on to play together the best, what unite attacks go together. There is so much complexity to this battle system, but you don't need to think complexly in order to like finish the game and do all the things. And that is such an incredible rarity in RPGs, where you have that, you're rewarded for engaging with the complexity, but the game will meet you there. Yeah, you got over 40 playable characters, but they're going to level up to match the rest of your crew in no time flat. It has all of these niceties, even in its original form, that make this very ahead of its time. And any quality of life addition to that, any new translation, anything else they do to it is kind of adding more whipped cream. Like, we were already sitting very pretty, but now it's accessible, and it's even more modern. And I cannot wait for these.
I think one of the highest compliments I could pay the original Suikoden is that it somehow has a completely contained experience that's satisfying, and yet every time I finish it, it leaves me wanting more.
Well, thankfully, there's a lot more to be had.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
I love Suikoden. There are a lot of people at the site who are mega fans. I'm a big fan of it. I think it's a wonderful game. I love me a good building up a base mechanic. So super excited to explore that again. And yeah, these things look great. Really excited for them. And we'll see if it comes out in March, but it looks good. It's looking good. Well, moving on to something that I think is actually a personal attack on Mr. Mike Solosi, which is Monster Hunter Wilds is coming out on February 28th, 1 week after Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii.
Absolutely cruel.
Yeah, it is. It is. Oh, how Solosi. That is.
It's not the same day anymore.
At least it's not the same day. Yes. So this is going to be a sequel to Monster Hunter World with an expanded open world. It's a Monster Hunter game. Monster Hunter games have been getting tremendously popular over the last couple of years after being a 20-year-old franchise. But they've just recently started to hit their stride in terms of popularity. And Wilds looks real good. I don't really know what to say about it. It's one of Capcom's best-selling franchises, and hopefully they're just going to knock it out of the park with this one.
Yeah, I've never played a Monster Hunter game. I tried so I went to Summer Game Fest and I saw like a half an hour demo of Wilds, and just like the volume of like environmental interaction as they were taking down this monster, and just like the many different ways that they were interacting with the systems was just like, this is amazing. And then I went to get back to go play Rise, which apparently is the simplest of the Monster Hunter games, and I was like, I'm very confused. Maybe another time.
100%.
So it looks amazing. I still want to play it, but I think I probably need to play the easier Rise game first and figure out what the heck I'm doing first.
Can completely relate to that, Zach. That's exactly my experience with Monster Hunter this year. I tried to get into it as somebody who really respects a lot of the people who do like that game. My brother's actually a big fan of the Monster Hunter series and universe, and I just need someone to hold my hand and just help me through so much of the learning curve before I think I could really jump in with both feet. But I'm pumped for Solosi and for the Monster Hunter community that I know is ravenous. They are extremely excitable around their favorites.
Yeah, I'm definitely one of those big Monster Hunter fans. And Monster Hunter World hit in a different way that Rise did for the mainstream public. There's something about the more AAA production quality and the fact that people could feel like where some of Dark Souls' DNA came from with the idea of stamina and this dodging heavy and these gigantic, difficult bosses that you take down over a course of time. I think that returns. Wilds is kind of the sequel to World, while Rise is kind of more of the sequel to the Monster Hunter games that came before. And the differences are kind of subtle, but it's just enough that, World, there are people in my life that I have never seen even think about the Monster Hunter series, get deeply invested, play through like every bit of available content for World. And Wilds just might continue that trend, and that really excites me. Because the more people you have playing, the easier it is to get into, the more that conversation is out there. And this is a game that thrives on a community. So the bigger the community, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, as someone who loves World even more than Rise, I am beyond pumped for this game. Like I got to try like the beta bit too, and it was like fantastic. Like I just love specifically about World, like the attention to detail in terms of like simulating what seems like a believable, like thorough ecosystem, and like really like emphasizing like the environment in Monster Hunter, which it's always been like, I know like hunter is the thing in the title, but it really from the beginning was more about like hunting and gathering and like knowing your environment and knowing how to like make things out of your environment. And Wild seems to be again focusing more on that direction rather than only like kind of really fun arcade combat, which Rise provided in spades. But I really like the production value I'm seeing with Wilds and like the attention to detail in that first environment we got to play in. and I am this is maybe my most hype release for next year. I am really looking forward to it.
I have never played one of these. I would like to, but also suspect that I won't. The fact that Solosi loves them so much and we share such an affinity for the Yakuza games, even if they are not the same genre, makes me go, this could be a trap. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Okay, let's move on now to something, again, that a last minute addition to this particular list that I need to write the blurb of after we finish recording, and that is the Outer Worlds 2. So I talked a lot about this on the episode last week when it was announced at the Game Awards. Well, it wasn't announced. We saw the trailer and we got a release date for 2025. It's considerably bigger. There's probably going to be different corporations. It's focusing on a different settlement's the wrong word. What word am I looking for? A different colony, I guess. I will also say that I am stunned that this was announced for 2025, because this Avowed is Obsidian's, like, it's been their standard bearer of this is our big game coming out. And then the Outer Worlds 2 is also going to be released in 2025. That's weird to me. That's two of their big releases in the same year. I'm very surprised. I would have thought they would have wanted to put their at least one of these big releases in their following financial year. So with that, I would be very surprised if this releases in 2025. I think this has 2026 written all over it. I don't have a problem with that. But does anyone else enjoy The Outer Worlds, the first one? And is anyone excited for the sequel?
Love The Outer Worlds.
Yeah.
Love The Outer Worlds. I mean, the trailer is hilariously funny. It is. I love their just the wit and charm that they infuse in the Outer Worlds universe. Fell off the original game, but enjoyed all the time I spent with it. This is one that I would easily put on my radar. And anybody out there who hasn't played the Outer Worlds, but like something like New Vegas or really any of Obsidian's work, needs to check it out.
Yeah, I'm also, as I kind of like mentioned in Avowed, like I liked Outer Worlds quite a bit. I just love the kind of like anti-corporate satire they have going on in this series, and that trailer really just leaned into it in terms of also being a commercial trailer, which was great. And I guess like in terms of like what else I'd like to see from this, just like I guess like the combat of Outer Worlds, like I know like combat is never something that was really my priority with Obsidian games, but just because like this is like kind of like a Fallout game, so you, despite whether you like combat or not, and whether that's like kind of your role-playing approach, you're gonna have to do it regardless. So if they just like I'm guessing they'll learn, they're learning from Avowed like how to do like even more good like melee combat and things like that. So if they can flesh that out and make just like the more kind of just mundane RPG stuff more satisfying and interesting and cool, which it seems like it based on the trailer, I think this will just be like just more of a consistently like well-balanced experience than the first game, and I would have a very good time with it.
More melee, just like punches the guy in the back of the head.
Yeah.
Just, okay, right on. It was a great trailer. So good.
That was a good trailer. Okay, well, I mean, like I said, I talked about this a bunch last week, so we can just move on to another game now. Let's move on now to Pokemon Z to A. Yes, I am Canadian.
So Canadian.
Yes, Z to A. That's the name of the game, right? Z-A, is it? I don't know. So this is the second Pokemon Legends game. The first one came out a few years ago, and it was, interestingly, it was like a period. It was a period game, which was set. I don't think there was an actual year because it's the Pokemon universe, but it was set years and years and years ago, and we were kind of like using prototypes of Pokeballs and things like that. This one, I to be honest, I've done a bit of research. I don't really know why this is a Legends game. Does anyone know? Because I know it's set. I know it's all set in the same location as X and Y, so it's set in a place that's very similar to France.
I imagine this is going to be shorthand for them for that specific gameplay style that the first one had. Because yeah, it seems like this one isn't like deeply in the past, but we know so little about it because we haven't seen gameplay. We haven't seen a lot of story stuff for it yet. So it's really hard to say for sure exactly what's going to make this fall in line. But on the other hand, Game Freak does love some amount of consistency in their sub-series. So I could see this ending up playing very similarly to Arceus as a result.
Yeah, that's kind of the impression I was getting too. It's a Legends in gameplay or flow or open world or whatever. Are
Which
we
is all good for me.
Yeah, there's no way this game comes out in 2025, right?
It might if it's broken.
Yeah, I mean, they've shown a willingness now.
If they don't mind you falling through the map, this could very much release in 2025.
Of all the games that we were going to talk about today, like the one that I put in my notes was like, I mean, come on, this one in 20. That'd be. Oh, that was great. That'd be sweet.
I was gonna say Arceus is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Pokemon game in the recent era. I absolutely adored it, was hooked on it, and I think that if they continue down that route, at least for this sub-series, they've got something that could be pretty magical on their hands for people like me. Especially if we see it on the Switch too, and the performance can keep up a little better.
Mm-hmm.
Fingers crossed, knocking on wood.
Switch 2, what's that? Speaking of things that I would say are probably going to be delayed until 2026. Nintendo's just going to take one look at those sales numbers for the Switch and be like, we can do another year's fine. So what if I can't actually play video games anymore? It's okay.
Another year, still selling more units than any single other Nintendo console has sold in any other year.
Yes. Incidentally, I realized something just a minute ago, which is this game is technically set in France, which means Z is actually the correct pronunciation of this letter in this title, because in the French alphabet, it ends in Z, not Z. So yeah, it's not just that I'm Canadian. I guess I could be French Canadian, but I'm not. I'm from Nova Scotia. So yeah, Z-A. That's the name of the game.
Nice try, Canada.
This is the hard hitting analysis that everyone needs. You're not going to get this anywhere else, guys.
Well, let's move on now to we're moving from France to England, jolly old England, with Professor Layton and the New World of Steam. So this is the first Professor Layton game in 12 years. It's going to be set in a very steampunky-esque environment. It's going to be picking up after the original trilogy. If you've played a Professor Layton game, you know what a Professor Layton game is. There's some kind of a mystery. You got the good professor in his big hat, and you go around solving puzzles that have absolutely nothing to do with the actual game, that are just mind teasers to collect coins and things like that in order to progress through the game. So it's been years since a Professor Layton game. These were so popular on the DS for very good reason. They were great games. There was a tremendous Professor Layton Ace Attorney spin-off game where the two of them were paired with each other, which I just really liked. It wasn't the best of either, but I really enjoyed it. So I'm super excited for this. I think that this is a genre that I could always use more of, and I'm just excited. I don't think we need to talk about it to a tremendous degree, but yeah, going to be fun, I hope.
I legit thought level 5 was dead, so I'm just excited that they're setting
stuff
up.
Active. Dead. They're super active.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It feels like I haven't seen any of their stuff outside of Japan in a minute, so that could be totally a me problem, but also I just was excited. I was like, oh, hey, cool, right on.
Oh yeah, they were okay. There's tons and tons just in the last. Next year, Fantasy Life The Girl Who Steals Time is due out, which is on the list. We're going to skip talking about it because we don't have time. Inazuma 11 Victory Road is also coming out.
I'm excited.
Oh yeah, they're super active.
Yeah, great, awesome.
Last year they mostly had Megaton Musashi, which might not make it on mini game of the year's list, but very cool game.
Yeah, maybe I'm just like not in their niche anymore, right? Like
they're all over the place nowadays, you know?
Yeah.
Well, they're getting back to their roots.
Well, that's what I mean. I'm from the Dark Cloud Rogue Galaxy type level 5 day.
They're big epic RPG days.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's move on. We, like I said, there are lots more games on these lists that we're not going to focus on. We're going to two left. Both are going to be remasters or remakes, depends on where you come from. And one of them, again, I know quite a few people are going to be excited about, and that is the Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. So this came out on the Wii U, which explains why, no one played it. But many, many, many people adore it. And it's going to be available in this, definitive edition that's going to be coming out on presumably the Switch. We'll see how it runs. Hopefully, it comes out on the Switch too. That would be great if it was a launch title on the Switch too. I think everyone would be very, very happy with that. Anyone excited for Chronicles X?
Oh, I
Absolutely.
definitely am.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, that was an overwhelming agreement. Everyone.
I mean, it's a game that it's the only Xenoblade Chronicles game that I haven't beaten, which I think is probably true for a lot of people. But I did play like the first 10 hours of it, but it was a little overwhelming. But the biggest issue was that the text was so small on my relatively small TV that I literally could not see what was happening on the screen. And so I eventually just gave up. And that's really what it boiled down to. Like, it's a game that I absolutely want to play. It's definitely different from the other Xenoblade games in terms of the quests being sort of the point. I never even got my Skell, which I definitely want to do. That exploration element, it's definitely got a little more of a Western flavor than the other Xenoblade games, but it is absolutely like a day one purchase and play game, which is unfortunate because it comes out around the same time as Suikoden, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah, I'm a giant mecha fan. Probably not the biggest one on staff, but that's just because we got some titans of the industry. But Xenoblade X was always, to me, like, first and foremost, the Xenoblade game where you can pilot a mech, and that is overwhelmingly exciting to me. But much like Zach, it was just kind of too much on the Wii U, and a lot of that for me was just using that Wii U gamepad, and having to like manage stuff on it pretty regularly and bounce back and forth and hold that big chunker. It just was not a pleasant experience for me. So the idea of being able to,
you really couldn't use the Pro Controller with that game, which is what I usually did on the Wii U. So
exactly, same here. So the idea of being able to play this with a Switch Pro controller is like exactly what I need in order to really be able to dig in and actually beat the game this time. And I'm excited because it's also pretty unique in that, you can create your own character and you have all these different job classes and routes to go down. It really is kind of a standout, and it has a lot of unique gameplay systems, even if the story isn't told necessarily the same as the other Xenoblade games. It's still something I think really special for fans that I'm glad is going to get a bigger audience than the Wii U finally.
Nintendo, a lot of Nintendo's success in the 2010s can be chalked up to the fact, and the late 2000s can be chalked up to the fact that they really did take a lot of chances with how they approached their games and how they presented their games, for example, on the DS and the 3DS, and then, of course, the Wii U, to differing levels of success. The problem is that I don't think they realized just how frigging hard it was going to be to release these games on future consoles because of their very unique inputs and display methods, which is one of the reasons why when a game like this comes out, it can't be a simple port, simply because they need to change a lot just to make it playable, because we do not have the kind of interface that the Wii U offered, which was a big honking screen while you play the game.
Yeah, I never owned a Wii U, and this is the game that...
Don't worry, you weren't alone.
Yeah, this is the game that made me closest to being like close to being sad about that. But now I don't even have to do that, because now it's coming to the Switch. I'm definitely interested in checking it out. I still haven't played as much of the Chronicles series as I'd like, but this just seemed like such a distinct RPG, like one of the most like creative major RPGs of its time, and I just want to see what's going on with this weirdness. It looks really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Xenoblade is one of the hashtag brands that you could just kind of slap its name on, and I'd be intrigued as to what it is and what it wants to do. And then I heard Wes say the words "create your own character" and "job class," and I am super in and pumped, even more so than even more so than the Xenoblade kind of universe would already have me.
Okay, and let's move on now to the final game on this list that we'll be talking about, which is Ys Memoir, The Oath in, holy crap, Felgahan. That is a Cthulhu-esque word. Felgahana, The Oath in Felghana.
First try.
This is a remaster of.
I think most people just say Felghana.
I like Felgahana. It should be Felgahana. That's my opinion. That's my hot take of this episode.
That's your hot take?
Okay, you're right. Probably tickle the nostalgia button is my actual hot take. Remaster of the 2005 action RPG has enhanced visuals, narration. The game has a voice protagonist. It's going to be like a lot of remasters. It's going to let people switch between the various graphics and audio style. So you can get the new shiny and the good old fashioned style that everyone knows. Ys, again, another franchise that has been around for, God, how long has Ys been around for? Probably closer to 35 to 40 years at this point. Like, it's not 40 years, but 30 years at the very least. Anyway, So it's been around for a long time, and over the last few years, it's been picking up in popularity once again. As the last entry on this list, because it starts with Y, anyone excited for Ys Memoir, The Oath and Felgahana?
Ys is one of those series that I have a real blind spot to, but I know that it's a popular one. It's one that I've kind of looked into a few times to see like where a good jumping on point is. Do we know if this is that one?
I think it is, yeah. I mean, the stories aren't usually that connected aside from sharing a redheaded protagonist.
Yeah.
Right.
This is actually, I think, one of the great jumping on points. Like I will always recommend the Ys 1 and 2 Chronicles. Like I adore those games, but the bump combat doesn't feel super modern. Oath and Felgahana is really the first one that feels like the rest of the series did after that. This kind of more modern action RPG feel. And the thing that really is great about Oath is that this is before the series kind of ballooned a little bit. Ys 8 is definitely where the play times went longer and they leaned more into epic RPG territory. This one you can finish in, a brisk 12 to 15 hours, which is, for an RPG pretty dang quick. And it doesn't sacrifice anything in gameplay or story to hit that length. It's brevity, not a lack of content. And I think that makes it one of the best spots to hop on. And yeah, Ys games narratively, there's some through lines, but really all you need to know is like he has a friend who likes to bust through walls. There's goddesses. We good? We good.
Yeah, it's a really good sell for someone like me who hasn't gotten into this series yet. Just to have like a 10 to 12 hour, just like straight no nonsense entry point, just to see what's going on. Like this kind of shot up on my radar just now, Wes. It's a good way to put it.
Yep, agreed.
Okay, and like we always say, this episode is the longest one of the year usually. Maybe bumping up against our not E3 episode, but. Before we go off, are there any games, I'd like everyone just to have a chance here, are there any games that were on the list that I didn't mention? Alternatively, are there any games that aren't on the list in any genre, a genre that we don't cover, for example, that you were excited for in 2025?
Jono, you tried to cut Dynasty Warriors, but you knew I wouldn't let this happen.
Get him, Wes.
Go.
Okay, so I adore the Dynasty Warriors series anyways, especially a lot of the spin-offs that it's done in the RPG realm have been pretty good crossover successes, but the main line has never had quite the same success with people kind of within our niche of the internet. Dynasty Warriors Origins stands a pretty good chance of changing that for a number of reasons. The kind of nameless character that they introduced makes this more of a heroic tale than a historical one, which allows you to kind of follow the kind of stories that a lot of RPGs often follow. There's a much denser progression system where this character can use all kinds of weapons from across the series, but maybe most importantly are the changes that they're making to the gameplay to give you unique abilities that you use that mix up the kind of standard flow of just squares and triangles that the Dynasty Warrior series is comprised of. And a lot of those come from the idea of you controlling an army and engaging in tactics, where in the demo that came out recently, you get a feel for how different it plays, especially when it forces you to fight Lu Bu, this legendary enemy that you are usually told to avoid at all costs. And really, it's hard to defeat him. He is incredibly powerful, unless you think a little bit more tactically. You lure him back into a base where you can get your health refilled and where you can replenish your troops to send out all these larger stratagems at him. It's a lot more of a thoughtful process to complete a level than it has been in the past. I will always argue for the Dynasty Warrior series having more going than a lot of people will give it credit for, but I think this one specifically might have it a little bit more on the surface and might show a little bit more of why this series is so beloved by at least some of us. There are enough of us out there to keep the series alive, so hopefully this earns a few new ones.
Yeah, Wes and I have exchanged a few messages over the last year or two with just in regards to the Musu series and the formula itself. I always think that when the Musu formula is done really well, it has a pretty unrivaled kind of addictive gaming loop, almost kind of in like a roguelite sense, where you're just constantly like, okay, so I go and I save this or I wreck this checkpoint and then I reap all the rewards from it, and then I reset and I go again. And for Dynasty Warriors to try to include more RPG elements, I saw a skill tree at one point. The overmap looks like you can actually interact with different parts. I'm really, really pumped that they're trying to take this into the direction that they are, because I think there's just a ton of like I said earlier, almost 2 hours ago, that historical fiction is just kind of a really underutilized genre, I think, sometimes. And so for the Romance of the Three Kingdoms stories to be getting a glow up at this level, I think is super exciting, and something that anybody who's an action RPG fan or a tactical kind of fan, I would encourage to keep this one on your radar, because it comes out in a few weeks, actually, almost a month away.
Mm-hmm. Okay, anyone else?
I'll give shout outs to 3 indie games that are all follow-ups to some of my favorites ever, and they'll totally come out in 2025. I hope. I will bring into the world just by including them on this podcast. And
at least
those
one
are
of them.
Those are Earthblade, the follow-up from the Celeste dev, which is more of an action platformer, maybe with some Metroidvania elements that looks really, really cool. Was first announced at not this Game Awards, but the one before. Really, really interesting looking trailer, which still kind of like using kind of like the Celeste and Towerfall art style while sprucing it up a bit in terms of art direction. There's Hyperlight Breaker, which is the follow-up to Hyperlight Drifter, which is going to, unlike the original, is going to be moving into a 3D space. And the dev before this one did a 3D game in Solar Ash, which was more focused on platforming, but had a very nice fluid movement. And if they combine like the high octane combat of Hyperlight Drifter with the movement of Solar Ash, I think this could be really cool. And then there's Hollow Knight Silksong, which no more comments. I'll just leave it at that.
I have no idea what you just said, and
what is that last game? I've never heard of it. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, speaking of, okay, see, that's the problem with saying things like, take as much time as you need to like Supergiant with Hades 2. I'm a little worried that they're going to look at that and be like, okay, if we have a yardstick to measure against. So that is everybody but Zach. Zach, do you have anything?
We've covered everything that I'm super excited for. I guess there's the new DLC that was announced for Chained Echoes. I loved Chained Echoes. Thought it was just like a great turn-based RPG. Had really interesting systems, but also really honored the classics. And I wasn't expecting a DLC for it, and so I think that one looks pretty great too.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I am going to cheat. I mentioned it a little bit earlier. I'm going to cheat and say the thing I'm most looking forward to is the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, I know I was joking and saying this thing's not going to be released until 2026. I don't actually believe that. I would put most of my money on the table that this thing is going to be released in the first half of 2025 for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is that there have been some significant leaks the last few weeks about this console that have come out from very credible sources. And some of the things that have been included, I mean, the actual console itself is bigger. The screen is, instead of 7 inches in diameter, it's 8 inches in diameter. The Joy-Cons are bigger, which is nice because you have to have little tiny baby hands to actually like properly use the Joy-Cons, in my opinion. They're very small. And there's also going to be like a USB-C port on the top of it, which is going to make charging it way easier. Dbrand is a company that makes cases and sticker decals and things like that for decals for your various electronics. And they rather brazenly released news about their Switch 2 case called the Kill Switch 2. And the CEO of the company has been out there just blabbing about the console and everything he knows about it, which is kind of classless, but at the same time makes me think that Nintendo somewhat greedily probably was like, maybe if we delay the Switch 2 just by a few more months, we can maybe get one more Christmas season out of the Switch. And that's kind of biting them in the butt in terms of secrecy. But this is not so much a, wow, I really, really am excited to see what the Switch 2 can do. This is like a console of necessity at this point. It's gotten sad and ridiculous. I'm really, really tired of asking the question, how does it run on the Switch? It's lazy. It's stupid at this point. I understand sales numbers. There's no excuse for this. This is a console that should have been replaced 1 or more years ago. And the fact that it's finally getting replaced now, hopefully it will have some juice behind it that it can last and play some games, some current gen games without, like, for God's sake, the damn console won't run crosscode, for God's sake, without slowdown. That's embarrassing. Like, that's Super Nintendo levels. Okay, maybe not Super Nintendo, but like this is a console that needs to get released, and it needs to get released ASAP, in my opinion. I don't think I'm going to get any pushback from that from anyone in this panel or anyone outside of Nintendo themselves.
No. My wife works for a Nintendo website, and so occasionally unless I want to pay for a game again, I kind of have to play it on the Switch. Like I'm playing Fantasian right now, and it runs mostly fine, but then like there's load times. I'm like, oh, please get rid of these load times. But I can't justify $60 just to get rid of load times. But yes, I agree 100%.
Yeah, there's just no excuse for it anymore. So hopefully we'll be getting one in 2025, and that's my most anticipated thing, because I suspect that if we're getting that in 2025, we'll be getting Mario Odyssey 2, I hope, because that would be my most anticipated game of 2025. Oh God, love Odyssey.
That's the truth.
Yeah. Oh, so fucking good. So good. I'm over Christmas. I'm going to be buying and playing Astrobot to really scratch that exact itch. So we'll see what happens there. Anyway, so that is what you can look forward to in 2025. I am personally going to be looking forward to chatting with all of these fine folks that I just chatted with into 2025 about these games and others that we do not know about yet. So I want to thank everyone for coming on today and taking your afternoon and spending it with me, because this is a long episode. So thank you.
It was fun. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep, just chatting about games. And if you are looking for a way to support us into 2025, I have a suggestion for you. You can visit our store. So you can find it at www.rpgfan.com/shop. Lots of things on there. I would say they make great Christmas presents. By the time this episode comes out, Christmas will be tomorrow, which is probably going to be a little bit late. I don't think we'll be able to ship it to you in time. But hey, good New Year's presents. You can find mugs, shirts, all kinds of things. You can also find our collaboration with Hyperplay RPG, the RPG Fan Review Card Collection, which is a showcase of nearly 300 of our review cards, as you can see on Instagram and other social media sites such as Blue Sky. Another way to support us is to check out our past episodes of Random Encounter. Like I said, the schedules have been a little wonky lately in terms of the podcast. Last week was, in fact, episode of Random. It was our breakdown of the 2024 Game Awards. I think it was a pretty special show this year. I think they really, really pulled it together in a way that they've been floundering a little bit since 2022. And I very much enjoyed it. I thought it was a solid evening of video game entertainment, and it was an absolute delight chatting about it. So check out that episode. And then over at Retro Encounter, we have a two-parter where the panel is chatting about Dragon Quest III. Except for Mike Solosi, we actually have that panel here today. How did it go, guys?
Well, it was great. We still, as of this recording, still have to record part 2. But yeah, I loved it. And chatting with those 3 lovely people, always good.
Mm-hmm. And apparently they don't feel the same way, Zach. They're like,
they're like, I can't stand that Zach guy.
No, it's been a lot of fun. I actually was playing the original NES version just for some historical learning, and it's held up. Like, I mean, like this new version looks fantastic. Like, it seems to be definitively the version to recommend to newcomers. But like, even going back to this old ass NES game, it was well balanced. It was a pretty good time. This last dungeon, which I still need to finish, has been a bit of a slog, but otherwise had a really good time.
There's a joy to the original NES game. There's a reason it's such a beloved title.
Yeah, 6.5. I don't know about this series.
Doesn't really have a future.
I'm not really convinced.
We'll see what happens when it was released on the Super Famicom. Okay, and we also have Rhythm Encounter, which is RPG Fan's music podcast. Like we said, the schedule has been a little wonky lately. 2 weeks ago, the panel was chatting about their RPG origin stories and the music that holds a special place in their heart. So give a listen to that, and that will soon be followed up with a brand new episode next week. If you'd like to get in contact with us here at Random Encounter, you can fire me off a message at podcast@rpgfan.com. If you have any suggestions for future episodes, ideas for conversation, discussion questions, just fire me off a message. I'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to contact me directly, you can do so at jlogan@rpgfan.com, but you can also find me on Blue Sky at jonologan.bsky.social. I am not the only person with a social media presence here. Zach, where can we find you?
You can email me, zachw@rpgfan.com, or you can find me on our Discord as ZachW.
Aleks.
You can just email me at alexfraniczek@gmail.com.
Kyle.
On Twitter, on Twitter, at Kyle Cantelon, at Kyle RPGFan, at Kyle RPGFan.
Cool. And Wes.
On Blue Sky, at Lone Weasel. On Twitter, never again.
Wes, yes. Fellas, you gotta get on Blue Sky. It's like Twitter in 2015 before it all went to hell.
It's beautiful.
I've only known Twitter when it's gone to hell. It's all the same to me.
Oh, it's very.
I was born in the darkness, molded by
I was
it.
molded by it.
Kyle, trust me, the grass isn't just greener over there. There's actual grass. There's grass over here, as in comparison to the like a barren yard full of Trump signs that is over there.
It did feel pretty nice to hang up the hazmat suit. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that anyone throws himself back into social media, but if you do miss at least somewhat positive social media experience, it's very similar to what Twitter was back when Twitter became popular, which unfortunately means that we can only go down from here. But for the moment, yeah, I'm a fan.
But is the owner of Blue Sky a top 10 Diablo player?
God, I hope not.
I hate you so much right now, Aleks.
I'm so proud of you.
Aleks from the top rope.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your friends, but not on Twitter. You can help us get the word out there. We've been recording too long. I'm giggly. You can get the word out there for us, and you can also rate us on iTunes or your other podcast player of choice. As I've said a few times, this is our last episode for 2024. To say that this was an exhausting year would be putting it mildly for so many reasons. But then again, honestly, when was the last time that we didn't have an exhausting year? And though none of us know exactly what awaits us in 2025, one thing that I am sure of is that there are going to be some absolutely remarkable games that are going to be coming out. Some of these ones that we talked about today, some of them aren't even announced yet. And some of them are just going to be complete surprises. And I can't wait to play them and share my thoughts and excitement with you. And I really cannot wait to join these fine folks and the rest of the folks at RPGFan to talk about these games going into 2025. So from everyone here at Random Encounter and RPGFan, we wish you peace and happiness. And whatever you're playing this holiday season, have fun.